Welcome, everyone, to the Feminine Outliers podcast, your dose of fun, life advice, and experiences from two African professional women living and working in the Western world. We are your hosts, Zelda Wasau
and Choolwe Mandona.
And we are excited to have you here. So, welcome everyone back to another episode on the Feminine Outliers. We are doing our career series. As we told you last month in January, we're going to be doing a career series episode every last episode of the month. And so we're hoping that this career series is going to be an educative, fun, and enlightening experience for all as we talk about our experiences as engineers and doctors and what it took to get there. Basically, anything involved with a career. But just a few housekeeping before I do that. During our career series episode, sorry, we will not be having an unlearning portion. So in case you were looking out for one of those, we will not be having that whenever we have a career series episode. But other than that, the whole purpose is to go straight to, the matter and the topic of the day. And so last month in January, we talked about what doctors are not. So it's just befitting that this month in February, we talk about what engineers are not. So I'm very excited for this episode because I really want to hear, what Choolwe has to say and just bust some myths involving engineers and the whole entire profession. So I will hand the floor over to you, Choolwe, and please let us know what engineers are not.
Thanks. So I am really excited about this because I get to talk about a profession that I am a part of. And over the years, I've come to understand what my job is all about and how it adds value to to society and to the economy, and now I can reflect back on my years in college studying to become an engineer, and also my work experience. And yeah, I'm excited to share with you guys what engineers are not. And it would be interesting to get feedback if this resonates with people or resonates with the engineers that are out there. So shout out,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, to all the engineers out there. You guys rock. I'm with you.
Yay!
Yay! So let's get started. So number one, engineers are not antisocial. Um,
Okay.
yeah, like yeah. So this is I want to say this is a myth I want to bust. Because when I feel like when people meet engineers, or they observe engineers, maybe they seem like they're just focused on their work. They're just trying to solve a problem, and they just hunker down and do what they need to do. Um, but one thing I've come to realize is that engineers are very social. In fact, the work that we do is very collaborative. So there's a lot of engaging with other brains, other people's minds into solving a problem. And it's not necessarily that one person is solving that particular problem. In fact, the number of interactions I have in the day, in just one in one day is countless. And it's not just verbal interactions with my other coworkers in the office. It's working with our clients and working with the people that make the technology. So I'm interacting with a lot of people in just one business day. And the number of emails I have to send out and the number of emails I have to read, instant messaging, there is so much that's going on. In fact, if
Hmm.
my yeah, in fact, if my day is very quiet, that will be very odd because usually someone could be working on a design and they may have a query and they think I could answer it and they'll just IM me, IM like they'll instant message me and they'll say, do you know the answer to this? And then
Hmm.
I have to respond, or technically, I want to help out. So it's a very collaborative culture. So if you're a person who is thinking that you're just going to hunker down in a corner, I mean, there are some jobs like that, but I think that's everywhere. Um, it's highly unlikely that you will be able to do that. Now, that's just the workplace. Engineers also socialize with each other outside work. Um, and the discussions may be different from, what other people discuss in the day to day world. I wouldn't say different because, I mean, we are human beings. And so we do experience what everybody's experiencing in the world. um, Maybe the line of the discussion is probably around solving the issue more than just discussing for the sake of discussing. And maybe just thinking through the methodology or the method of why things are the way they are. But there's still a social component.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's still a social component to it. So I would want to bust the myth that engineers are not social.
uh, okay. So I have. Uh, would you say so? When how do I phrase this? So engineers are not social, which is, as you said, is a myth that we are
Antisocial.
basting right now. They're not
Yeah.
antisocial.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for correcting me. I'm really getting my negatives wrong. So what would when it comes to my perception of, well, of engineers, not particularly mine, but from the medicine world,
Mm,
part of the issues they've had is, so engineers are generally, you guys are very smart. You have to be smart with all the knowledge required to do engineering. But a big issue that they've had with, engineers that choose to become medical doctors. So a lot of people who do like engineering in, um, undergraduate and then decide to go to medical school,
mm,
afterwards, is that they tend to be they have poor social skills. That
mm,
has been something that has been cited by some of the um, medical school recruiters. Um,
mm-hmm,
and like it's been seen, I think, in studies like that, they tend to have the best grades,
mm-hmm,
but the poorest people skills, particularly now when it comes to interacting with kids, with not kids, with patients, and when it comes to bedside manner. So there was a point in time, I don't know if it's still valid today, but there's a point in
mm-hmm,
time in which medical schools were really trying to avoid, um, recruiting engineers because they realized down the line it might cause them an issue because of the social component. So it's
mm-hmm,
interesting to hear you talk about the social component and be like, it's actually a myth, because I'm curious as to, is it that we just happen to have a bad luck of the draw that the ones who happen to be interested in medicine, for a good chunk of them, do not appear to be the most socially have the most social skills? Um,
mm,
I don't know, because that was an issue, because in general, this whole issue in medicine of bedside manner, and they realized that
mm-hmm,
people who are not as well rounded. So when I think about engineers, you guys really sit down, study really hard. You have long hours to study, long books. So like you, a lot of times, like when I think about engineers from Miami University, it's like you didn't have much time for outside life
Mm,
because you were all in your books. So basically, I think the thing was not necessarily against engineers but it was, I mean, there was something against engineers, but it was, I think, because they did not appear to be well rounded. It was, they were just
okay.
books, 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 but they didn't really, and so if you just books, 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 fine, you might be book smart, but the question is, why you're not doing other extracurricular activities that really help show more of a social aspect. So is there any truth to that? That, I mean, from your perspective,
Mm,
because you're
yeah,
saying, because I see what you're saying, and it's really refreshing to hear you say, yeah, we need social skills every day in our workplace, which is
yeah.
true from what you're saying, and hearing that aspect is really nice. But yeah, is there any truth to that, or like, what's your opinion on that?
No, that's a very good question. So, the best way I could answer it, and from my experience, is that it it's like if you compartmentalize, and for me, I actually do that now because I see that there's more to my life than just engineering, but because it's something that I practice on a daily basis, um, it can the skills and the mindset you require to practice this profession is leaning towards the logical side of things because as an engineer you are practically a problem solver, and so
Mm-hmm.
you are tapping into the side of, I don't know if I want to say the brain or that part of, yeah, that part of being a human being where you're doing a lot of thinking. So it's a very thinking oriented and job. And so
Mm-hmm.
the goal of a problem solver in this case is, okay, I need to solve this problem. So I need to focus on the details that will get me to the solution. So what ends up happening is that the focus becomes getting to the end goal or the outcome. And it's also leaning into um, scientific and mathematical principles. And that becomes very, as you said, that like, you said you use the word smart, but we're tapping into very detail complex principles that it's kind of like a language that we're tapping into, and then we solve the problem. And so by the time we're done, it feels it's a very exhausting job because you're thinking all day. So by the time you're done, you're just excited that you've got to the end of this challenge that you are facing, that the side or the emotional side doesn't kick in um to say, oh yes, um this is we were supposed to, when we gave you the solution, we're supposed to have smiled at you, but it's the excitement comes out of like, we actually solved the problem and everyone should be happy. So um I would say it's just more, it's more of a strong leaning towards the logical aspect of our brain more than the emotional aspect.
Hmm.
So but at the end of the day, the socializing does come from, oh yeah, this is what we did today, or just in general. But that's the best way I can explain it. Is just we tap into different sides of ourselves, and engineers tap into the logical side of themselves a lot. That it's probably more, there needs to be more awareness to tap into the emotional side of things.
That's a really interesting way of putting it. I was like, huh, I like that. I mean, so maybe in that aspect, it makes me think like doctors are more like, so if you put in, they're more kind of a mix of the logic and the emotional side, because we kind of have no option.
Mhm.
We still have to deal we still end up dealing with human emotions as engineers, because you're not dealing with for example, you're not dealing with human lives, so you don't have to necessarily deal with those emotions that come with it. So it's more
Mhm.
logic based. So I actually like that. So it's that you guys are more logic based and with less on the emotional side. So maybe that's
Mhm.
why when engineers go into medical school, they have this, the logic is there and you can see it in the grades and stuff. It's just that now when it comes to interacting with people, as you
Mhm.
said, they have to learn how to tap into it, because as you also mentioned something about being solution oriented.
Mhm.
Um,
Yep.
and so like I can assume that engineer who wants to be who becomes a medical doctor is like, okay, the solution is the patient getting better. And
Yes.
so how do we get there? And then, but everything else in between, talking to the patient, making them feel nice, it's not really part of the solution. So they're like,
Mhm.
logically, this is why we should get there. That makes sense, because it was an issue at some point. I don't know about now, because I mean, I'm far gone from medical school recruiting days, those days of that. But that's really an interesting way. I like that. You've put things in perspective in a way that I did not look at before or assume before, but it explains a lot of things. So yeah.
There you go. Yeah, no, it does. I do that as well. I tend to be some and I think we have discussed this on the podcast that there are times when I'm very impatient with small talk because when I'm in the zone of solving a problem, I all I want is the necessary information that gets me to the solution, the critical path. So as soon as someone starts talking about something that is nowhere near to where I'm trying to go, it becomes a irritation and a kind of like a frustration. And it's something where I'm like, okay, I get you, but in my mind, and I may not. So that's where my emotional maturity kicks in, where I will have to say to the person, thank you, thanks, but that it's all right. I don't. In my mind, I'm saying I don't need any of this information because it's not giving me any more help to get to the solution. So, but I have to I realize that not every engineer may have that emotional intelligence, and obviously emotional intelligence is a skill I've also grown to learn, and I'm still growing. So there has to be like,
Hmm.
okay, yes, you're looking for the solution, but the person you're talking to in front of you, is an emotional being. So be aware of that. So I get sometimes
Right.
frustrated with small talk. So yeah, it is what it is.
Good
Okay.
one.
All right. On to the next one. It's actually related to this. And the second one is we do not speak math and science all day, every day. I mean, I just, okay, this is one of those things where it's something that I'm frustrated by because when I have read articles or listened to people's stories who have become engineers, and maybe even myself, I think I may have done this as well. When people say, or ask me, why did you decide to become an engineer? And someone will say, oh, I was good in math and science. That's why I decided to become an engineer. And it, oh my
I can
goodness.
tell, see from your face, you're like, this irritates me.
Yeah, because I feel like it limits people who may want to do engineering,
Hmm.
but they think that they really need to be good at math and science. And
Hmm.
it's, in my mind, now that I've been in this industry for a while, I don't even use the calculus. Like we had to do calculus 3, which is like the third calculus where it just looks like, I don't know, some weird language when you look at it on the paper with all the symbols. And I'm like, why did we do that in the first place? Why did we go all the way to calculus 3 when we could have just stopped at, I don't know, calculus 2 or calculus 1? Because all of that math, I don't even remember how to do it. And that's just the honest truth. Now, if I spent a little bit of time, will I get back, that sort of skill or knowledge to do it? Yes. But I'm not currently utilizing it in my profession because the software and the technology that we use already accounts for all those equations and all of that done. So machines are already working for us. So when you're actually an engineer, you start using tools to help you do your work. You're not actually doing like a calculus calculation. And so
Hmm.
if you're someone in college right now and you're doing okay in calculus, it is not the end of your engineering dream. So don't pull out of becoming an engineer. And the same thing with the sciences as well. To become a chemical engineer, for example, I had to do physical chemistry, which was the bane of people's existence at Miami University. Like, if you if you failed physical chemistry, you're probably not graduating, and that's how I felt about being a chemical engineering student. But I am not using most of the stuff that I learned in physical chemistry. Like, of course, there is a language to it. So, math and science to an engineer is a language, the same way people learn Mandarin or French or German or Swahili. It's just a language, and it's understanding it enough to be able to know why things are the way they are. But when you get into the industry, you already have the technology, like I said, where the background calculations, things have already been set up, and your goal is now to solve the problem at hand. So yeah, we don't speak math and science. We don't, a lot of people don't even remember what they did in college or the textbooks they use. Um, and it's just what it is. Unless the problem is so complex and so difficult that we have to really go back to the basics. And I mean the basics. And when that happens, yes, you're going to pull out a textbook and look through that textbook and understand like where we missing something. But
Hmm.
for the most part, it's just the day to day life of an engineer is just it's ordinary. It's almost like any other job. I would say so. Yeah, we speak regular, normal language, normal talk. As I going back to it, so people should not feel intimidated to become an engineer.
Hmm. I mean, it's true when we think about engineers, you think about all the hard math and sciencey classes, and you're like, that automatically pops into our head. Um, but first of all, calculus, PTSD. I did up to calculus one, and I was like, "What is this?" Um,
Mm,
I, I think I got a B. Anyways,
exactly. Now imagine
I
going all the way to calculus 3. Like, okay.
honestly, like, I was like, "What is this?" But then I also, it's an interesting statement because you said, you don't all you don't only speak math and science, but you also said that it's not like the end all be all for engineering. Essentially, is
Mhm.
what you would say.
Yeah.
Um, but the problem is, and this is something that actually also applies to medicine. I'm pretty sure you have to do those math and science courses, particular ones, for getting into engineering, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
like you have no option but to actually do some of them.
Exactly. And I think what I would say is that I obviously I'm not here to change the education system and how it's been set up. But
Hmm.
what I would say is do as good as you can. Like obviously get a passing grade for you to move on to the next level in your education. But I wouldn't think that you need to be really good, or like you need an A plus, or
Hmm.
you need you need really high grades, because I've also noticed that even from my experience, even the some of my college mates that maybe were struggling in some of these subjects, they're doing really well in their careers right now. And they didn't have to get an A plus to show that, oh, I'm going to become a good engineer. Because what actually, I think, to me, it's an opinion, what makes an engineer good is that ability to solve the problem at hand. So it doesn't matter if you memorize one of the equations that that from the textbook. That's not what matters. Like head knowledge is not important. So engineering is a very practical career. So even if you didn't do too well, or you thought you needed an A plus and you got a C and you passed, the fact when you get into the industry, you need to just be practical and a problem solver. Like just have that intuition, and that will guide you in how to get the problem done. And most likely you will be working with someone who's super smart at the calculus or at the whatever the science behind it, and will help you out to solve the problem, because it is collaborative. So you'll be just fine.
I guess this is a problem with the system in general
Mm,
because it's the same issue as I said in medicine, in which you have particular subjects you're required to do and pass, and sometimes, ideally, the better you do in those classes, your opportunities might be a little bit more available. You might have more opportunities available because they'll be like, oh my goodness, you have the best calculus grades, you have good physics grades, science grades, whatever. So in the head, they'll
mm,
be like, okay, this person will probably make a good engineer, which I think we have all come to agree to the fact that all those required subjects you need for getting in, it's good to
mm-hmm,
have a good knowledge in them, as you said. I think you phrased it really well, but you don't have to necessarily 100% ace them. It doesn't necessarily show how good of a engineer you're going to be.
mm-hmm,
But
exactly.
but that's only one to get into the actual real world. The problem is
Mm-hmm,
to get to this engineering, to qualify for engineering, to do a master's engineering, certain grade points you need, and the system just kind of plays us. And it plays us
mm,
in so many different ways because now you feel like you feel like your end all be all is to do perfectly in those classes, only to become an engineer and you realize, I'm barely using calculus.
mm-hmm.
Like, do you ever wonder why you go through all that nonsense and then you realize, I'm barely using this?
I don't understand.
I
I don't understand. I wonder if it's a way to weed out, you know, I don't know, to try and get people who would be quote unquote good, but just having head knowledge is not, and is not a guarantee that you actually be a good engineer, because you haven't developed intuition of that feeling of like how am I going to solve this problem. You're still using like the books. You just, I don't know. It's just like you. To me, if you ace, like in school, if you ace a class, like a science class, a math class, it just you're probably either a good memorizer or you actually understand the material. And so I don't know why we go through all of that, but that's why I'm really fresh. That's why I think I have the frustration, because I really want to tell people that you can be an engineer even if your grades are not that great. Obviously, pass through the system and just keep pushing on. To be fair.
E- I think that's a good way of just phrasing it. Because honestly, the system becomes the issue when they
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, you need to have this perfect grade, see this perfect that, and then and then ultimately, when you become an engineer, looking back, you're like, I didn't really need that. Why did you
Exactly.
make me suffer through that? And I did not really need it. I'm
Ex-
sorry. This is me coming out being passionate about all the nonsense classes I had to do. They have nothing to do with medicine. But I
exactly.
think ultimately, as you said, you're just coming back to that engineers are still, in a way like they are multifaceted and well-rounded, because you're saying we don't just speak math and science.
Exactly.
So we're not just unifaceted and just say that. There's more to it than just meets the eye. I like that. I think
Exactly.
we need that reminder sometimes,
Exactly.
because we can fall into this trap of how society views engineers, and then you forget that there's a lot more to it than just meets the eye. So yeah.
Exactly. So that actually brings me to my next point, which you already said it, is we are not one dimensional. Um,
Yay.
and you had mentioned this also in the what doctors are not, and I would like to say
Mhm.
we are not one dimensional. And
Mhm.
I guess I want to say I'm a living example of that, I hope. Maybe some people are like, oh, you are one dimensional, but I want to say I do not believe I'm one dimensional, and I know other engineers who are not one dimensional. I mean, we are, because one, we have this mindset to think systematically and to think about, problems in great detail. So we are able to actually put ourselves in different situations and thrive, even from a professional standpoint. Like you just pointed out, um, Zell, that you have medical doctors who did engineering as their pre medical degree, bachelor's degree. I know of engineers who are in banking. They're like in finance. So even from a professional standpoint, we are all over the place. I know engineers who have started businesses. I know engineers who are in um, artistic parts or elements of society. So they're not just in the engineering sector. An example of myself right now, I'm doing this podcast, and this is
Mhm.
nothing necessarily to do with anything techie. It's conversational, and it's just pretty chilled. So um, so engineers don't have to look like a person who's carrying a calculator in one hand and I don't know, a hard hat, um, and that's it. And then they go home and they just do that. No. Funny enough, some of my coworkers are actually musicians. Um, in their spare time,
Nice.
they like to play guitar. They're part of a band. So it's, yeah, they're just, yeah, they're everywhere. So if you think an engineer is just doing one thing, that's a myth worth busting.
I feel like a lot of people in the STEM field, so any kind of sciencey field, tend to fall prey to that definition of being one dimensional. Because as you mentioned,
Mm,
it was the same thing in the what doctors are not. It's people just happen to think you because you're in a sciencey field. That's all you live, breathe, whatever. And it's like, no. I like how you said, you have colleagues who are who are into music and do that, and that's so beautiful because it shows they have the sciencey side, but they also have the creative side that comes out,
Mm-hmm.
and that's I feel like, when you think about it, again, society is the one that really pulls this narrative. Have you watched Oppenheimer?
No.
OMG, Choolwe. Okay, and you're an engineer.
Okay, I need to watch
Okay.
it now.
Sorry. But the engineers, when you said about, you think engineers wear the hat, is it the had
The
hats
hard,
or
yeah,
hats? Yeah,
yeah.
things like that. Oh my goodness, Oppenheimer came to my head because engineers are very vital in
Mm-hmm.
that movie. And that's how
Mm,
they look. But engineers look like, they're very nerdy, some
mm,
with the glasses, wearing the suits. And, you know, I feel like, I feel like uh, they portray kind of what that whole like engineers are one dimensional, but I feel like they portray what it was back in the day because I think this was
mm-hmm.
during the 1940s that um, they were this was based over the 1940s. So I'm pretty sure back in the days, maybe like engineers were one, they were not multifaceted because they just played into what society said and they just did what was they were told to do. But nowadays, as society has evolved and changed, those same um, stereotypes that were set into place years back when they might have actually been real to
Mm,
some extent. I mean, there's always room for, you know, a stereotype not being 100% real for sure. But those
mm-hmm.
stereotypes don't serve us to this day and age now. So,
Exactly.
yeah, watch the movie.
Okay, I will. My coworker actually told me about it, and now that you're saying it, I should now watch the movie. Okay,
Mhm.
it's on my list. I'll get to it. So no, good stuff. Okay, so the next
What's the
one.
next one?
All right, so engineers are not experts at fixing things that are broken. Like we're not expert at fixing everything that's broken. And I need to say that it's actually very funny because, for example, um, I am a
Lol.
water I am a water engineer. Okay. And so when I tell people I'm a water engineer, the first thing I typically get is this fascination like, oh, because they're like, drinking water? Like, people are like, it needs engineers. And I'm like, yeah, it does. How do you think your water comes to you? But I realize that many people don't realize that, yes, my water, I didn't go to the river to collect my water. No, you didn't. You opened up a tap and someone is behind it. And one of those people is probably someone like me. So, but then what happens is then I'll get someone say, oh, so I have an issue with my plumbing. And I was like, no. So it's there's a difference. So the water engineer works on something that's more of a larger scale to supply water to, cities, towns. And so the kind of work I do is on a bigger scale, and my skill sets are applied to that kind of problem. So it doesn't mean that then I know how to fix your bathroom. It doesn't mean I know why your shower head is leaking, or I mean, I could understand what's going on just because of, just just understanding how a system works, how the process works, but I don't know exactly how to fix the problem. So even me as a water engineer, when my toilet is broken or my shower is not working, I have to call a plumber. So like there are two different things, and so I don't fix, household issues. Um, and it also applies to other things. Like when someone is like, oh, my kettle is not working or my bicycle is broken. I'm like, look, I don't, yes, I am an engineer. I don't understand everything. I need to spend time to also read maybe the, what do you call that, the manual, and then maybe gauge and see, okay, maybe I might know what the problem is, because that's my line of work, to be able to figure out problems really quickly. But no, I don't fix, we don't fix every problem that's out there. So just call the appropriate fixer, and or read the manual and then try and figure it out and troubleshoot. So just putting it out there. So the next time you're in a conversation with an engineer, just realize they're just human. They don't know everything. So don't try and pile your problems or your burdens on them and you're hoping that that person answers, gives you a really good answer, and then you determine, if they don't give you a good answer, you're like, wow, that guy is not that smart, or that woman is not that smart. No, 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 no. Just different problems that we solve, and we're experts at specific problems, not all problems.
Hashtag I am not a plumber.
No, no. Yeah, and shout out to all the plumbers. I mean, they do great work. They make things work. So nothing on it. I'm not even saying that my job is way better. It's just that it doesn't it our ability to solve problems doesn't apply to everything. So,
I mean, that makes sense. I guess it just goes back to what do we think engineers are. It's funny though, with the way you said you deal with the whole like water engineering thing on a more what did you say, systemic wide scale basis. So
large
maybe
scale, like a large scale.
large scale, right? So
Yeah,
you're probably dealing with, where the pipes coming from, are
exactly.
they, what type of pipes are they, and how are they being connected in the city and stuff like that.
Exactly.
But someone is thinking, no, my my this at home. You're like, nope, wrong profession.
Yes, wrong profession. Exactly. Um
It's funny because I guess this is another thing we all fall victim to again, is you just assume that
mhm.
someone should know X, Y, and Z because they're ABC. And it affects a lot of other professions as well, in which people will be like, oh, so you have to know this, you have to know that. Because it's funny because I saw this Instagram post on
Mm.
lawyers, and the guy was saying how, when someone learns that they're a lawyer, you're a lawyer, they start talking about all these contracts. Like, oh, is this okay? Was this okay? Is that what I'm supposed to do? Blah blah blah. And it becomes a like, and the guy's like, I'm not a contracts lawyer.
Mm.
Like,
Yeah.
so it's kind of it's interesting to see that this just it follows a lot of different professions around. We basically just we're really good as human beings at expressing our bias and
mhm.
not stopping to think about, hmm, why are we asking this? Why are we doing this? Or why are we assuming this?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And
that was a
also,
funny. I think
yeah.
I'll leave the hashtag I am not a plumber.
No, it is, and the thing I was just thinking as you were saying is that a lot of these professions, like being an engineer, medical doctor, lawyer, accountant, I think these professions were highly regarded in the past, as you said. Like they were put on a pedestal, and probably because they were critical in society. I mean, without these professions, probably society would come to a standstill a little bit. But and now that the world is opening up and people have the opportunity to become these professions, especially, and this is gonna be my next one, like women, for example, more women are in the engineering industry, I think there's so it feels like, oh my goodness, I'm getting into this profession that's whatever society, whatever image society gave these professions in the past is just that residual is coming through, like, oh, wait a minute, so I thought this, and so people just have very high expectations of these professions, not realizing that no, we really focus on specific things and we're not able to solve every problem. So it's, yeah, it's very interesting.
I like that. It's a good reminder.
Yeah, it is. It is a good reminder. All right. So the next one, I already gave you a hint, is that how do I say this actually? I don't know. Oh, maybe I wouldn't say engineers, but I'll say engineering. So the other myth I am busting is that engineering is not feminine. So, and we are on the feminine outliers. So, obviously, me being an engineer and being a woman, I am an engineer. So, unapologetically an engineer. And
Yes, Choolwe.
no, I feel like I have to say that. And I really hope that as time goes on, it doesn't have to be a cool thing to be female and an engineer. And
Mm,
I do realize, and people probably see this, that a lot of engineers tend to be men, so they tend to be male. And
mhm,
as a woman coming into this field, of course, the odds of me working with a man are very high. And I, I, unfortunately, there is still a high ratio of men to women. So there's still more men than women in the field. But the good news is that the numbers are been going up. Women that are taking up engineering and women that are entering the workforce. There's still a lot of work to be done in this space. For example, to see women leading tech companies or STEM companies or STEM oriented companies. So there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. But this is for people, particularly, for example, women that are thinking to themselves, "Oh, I'm going to be working with just men." That's not the case, and the idea that if you start working, like with men, and you're going to be in this environment that you're going to take on the energy of men and you're going to be like just like one of the men, like one of the quote unquote boys. And that's not the case. Um, and it's something that I used to think about as well when I first started. Like I thought, oh, do I have to go
mhm.
to work like with a pantsuit, like, just like wear, a pair of trousers, just like the men so that I fit in? Should I have
Mhm.
a haircut or something of that nature? And all of that is unnecessary. And I'm here to say all of that is unnecessary. Um, that you could be still feminine and still be the person that you are and still get your work done. So the key thing here is that the work that I do, although a lot of the work in engineering, as I have said earlier, is very logical. It requires a lot of what is deemed as masculine traits. So logical, assertive, confidence, and just that. Yeah, basically those traits are necessary to do your job, especially if you're going to be trying to solve a problem. You can't really think any way and anyhow. And the other thing um, about this job is it also focuses on safety. So, what do I mean by that? Whatever we engineer, whatever we design, we have to make sure that it's safe for people to use. So whenever, as a water engineer, whatever system I create or my team creates, we have to make sure that the water you drink is safe, that you'll be just fine. And I'm sure it applies to bridge engineers. They have to make sure that when you drive across the bridge, you're not going to fall, you're not going to fall off, or the bridge is going to crack every time you drive across the bridge. So we think safety. Now, to think about designing something safely, you have to take into account um, all the potential scenarios that are humanly possible. Obviously, we can't design for something that we cannot predict, and we have to utilize, the best way I can say it is, we have to understand Mother Nature and what Mother Nature can do to us. So we engineer, like, in considering the potential, like weather, climate change, I mean, just gravity, all these things. And so the mindset required is very logical. But outside that, you can be feminine. You can just, you know, do whatever do whatever makes you, like being your authentic self. So for example, like when I go to work, I will wear dresses. I like to wear dresses when I go to work. So 2 to 3 times in a day, I will put on earrings. Sometimes I'll put on makeup. And even when I interact with, my coworkers, or even in the past, when someone asks me, "So, Choolwe, what are you doing this weekend?" And I say, "Oh, I'm gonna get a manicure." And sometimes I tease them and be like, "You wanna come with me? I know the best color for you." Like, and everyone just like jokes, like, "Ha ha ha ha!" Like, because it's this whole thing of like, I'm not gonna come to the manicure spa with you, but we just joke about it, and I bring in my feminine aspects to it as well. And it's just a fun thing, and I think the key thing is obviously finding the environments that allow for that, because as I said, it's still an evolving industry that's allowing more, that more women are coming into it, so it's still evolving. But I feel like so far in my own experience, I've been able to stay feminine and true to myself while doing a job that requires masculine traits, or things that are deemed as
Mm,
masculine you know
yeah. I like that. I mean, again, another societal problem.
I know, right?
Another societal problem. Because um same thing in medicine, a lot of these male, at least previously, and some still currently, male dominated fields, people just assume, again, you have to have masculine traits, you have to, you know, to be at the same level as them to do that. And I'm like, it doesn't actually, you being having masculine traits, but does not say how qualified you are, does not
Mm,
say anything about your qualifications. It's just, again, the bias we have that people should act like this, look like this, do like this to be a certain way in different professions. And
mhm,
I can see that definitely affecting engineers, because even the way they portray engineers, um it's true, you don't, by default, they tend to portray more males than females. So
mhm,
it just becomes a whole thing of, well, where's the female representation? And then also when they show females with more masculine traits, or they would not show a female in, you know, nails done, I don't
mm,
know, maybe with pink and stuff. It's just going back to societal bias of how people don't realize you being feminine and you being like that has nothing to do with, does not necessarily have anything to do with your profession. And
mhm,
most certainly does not say anything about your qualification.
mhm.
It's just other people who might think, oh, this is less professional, this is less that. But again, why is it less professional?
Mhm.
Why did you come up with that narrative that X, Y, and Z looks better than X, Y, and ABC looks worse, or something like that? So it's a very good statement. I mean, it's interesting because all of these points you've been making, I just have been so relevant to so many other different aspects and fields in life. It's like, wow, like we're just all facing the same issues out here.
Mhm. I know. And it just gives to this idea that the mind has no agenda. Like there's no it is just the mind, right? Cuz like doing medicine, doing engineering, they're very mental thinking orienting jobs, and
Hmm.
to think that you people had to place agenda to it to say it's only a man who can do this. So it's something of that nature. It's just like it just goes to show it has nothing to do with how you dress, how you look. um
Hmm.
if you can get the job done, honestly, you're in. If you're passionate about solving problems, you're passionate about just how things work. And Zell, you've probably seen me when we have discussions. I start getting nerdy where I start looking into the details of something. That's just how I'm wired, and it has nothing to do with whether I wear a dress or not. It's just all it's internal. So um I'm hoping that eventually people are not going to be judged by their outlook appearance or how they express themselves, but really just by their ability to use their brain, use their mind to make a difference. So I don't know. That's my take on this.
I mean, I like that. It's a good way of summarizing that point. Um, yeah. Any other, you know, points, what engineers are not, or
No, not at all. I think I got my list. This is what I have to say. That's it.
that was really good. Yeah, there's just certain things I was like, huh, this was really good to hear. You know, I think the one that really stuck with me was the logic, being more logic oriented and then less emotional and stuff. I don't know the breakdown has really helped, expand my knowledge on this
Mm-hmm.
situation. But I also realized as we're talking, it kind of just, I mean, I might be wrong, but it kind of just expresses how we're outliers, because
Mm.
even the way we're thinking is like, okay, why are you putting us in boxes? Why are you putting, there's no need to try and box us in. Just let us be, and, you'll see who we are as, time goes on. But I realize there's also a lot of, at least because I just came from Kenya, there's still a lot of, people who live in those boxes and don't even realize they're living in those boxes, because you would need
Mm.
to find a female engineer somewhere that's less, I don't know, developed or a more
Mm.
conservative place, and they might think they have to take on masculine traits because of, and that's all they know. I think because
Mm-hmm.
we're enlightened and we have, experiences with more, and I mean, we're in the Western world, we're have vast, we've traveled and things like that. I think that helps
Mm-hmm.
us, be a little bit more enlightened in general and open-minded to things. It still irks me to realize that there are still people who literally do not realize the error in their ways because they're so close-minded and that's all they've been that's all they've been exposed to. So they think
Mm-hmm.
about all these stereotypes as if they're true, until someone one day is like, no, the world doesn't necessarily work like this all the time, or, you know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
no.
and so we're here, and we're busting those myths. So that's exciting, and I hope this does resonate with with people out there, and even for the people that are thinking, can I be an engineer? Absolutely. If you want to solve problems, you're in. Don't feel like you're not. And of course, complete the necessary steps. We unfortunately cannot change the way society thinks, but really
Mhm.
just stay focused on your dream or your vision, and you'll get there, and you'll be another example to show people that it can be done. So yeah, it's unfortunate. I totally understand that. But this is why we're here, to expose people to the truth.
I like that. I like that.
Yay!
Well, guys, we have come to the end of this episode. I hope you've enjoyed Choolwe's take on what engineers are not. I certainly have. I've learned a lot, and I'm hoping people out there have also learned something. If you have any questions, please feel free to email the feminine at gmail.com. Any questions in regards to what engineers are not, or anything about engineers that you think Choolwe will be able to help you answer, please give us an email. Send us an email. Um, if you have any, comments, feel free again to email us on thefeminineatliers@gmail.com. Just to remind you guys, we do have an Instagram now, and yes, we are working on it.
Yes.
But please go and like and subscribe to our account. It's the Feminine at Liars. It's on Instagram. We would love to, build our following and be able to, bless people and with our Instagram account. So please go ahead, like it, follow it. We will be posting, um, information and stuff on there as well. Again, we are on all the major podcast channels, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, you name it. So please feel free, go ahead, like, share a podcast with someone who you think would benefit from this. Leave us comments, please rate us. All this would be very helpful to us. And, you know, as we expand and grow, we shall let you know, what other opportunities we have in the future. But as of now, this is the end of this amazing series, the career series on, as we said today, what engineers are not. The next one will be end of March, so please be looking out for that. But as of now, until next time, have fun, live large, and don't be afraid to be an outlier. Thank you, everyone, for
Woo!
listening.